Okay. Yep, we're recording and everything. Yep.
Okay, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the public meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Albany. Today, Wednesday, the 26th. To keep this on the agenda, we have an attorney item that we're going to start with. It's product number 00503, application for a use variance, number 824 and 0543. Property address is 64th Avenue and it's current South Allen LLC. Empty brick instead of chicken agent. The proposal is to modify the use of an existing use variance to elect use for manufacturing of small electronic devices for heavy commercial services or for it's the second time we've had you at a meeting. So
Hello.
welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having us back. Andy Brick, from the Brick Law Firm. With me is Jerry Curran and Seamus Curran, current flooring. Since the last meeting, at the board's suggestion, Jerry has met with the local neighborhood association. And that meeting went very well. And he's also communicated and spoken with the local area council member, Councilmember Johnson, who also those conversations went well. At the neighborhood association meeting, they explained what they wanted to do with the building and answered any questions anybody had. And did the same with the council member, who I also believe attended the neighborhood association. In addition to that, we had submitted in our PowerPoint. Remember, Mahoney had suggested that we take a look at the purpose section of the particular zoning district that we're in, which is MU South End, mixed-use South End. And I appreciate that suggestion because I was very surprised to look at it. I wasn't sure when you had suggested that. You had focused on looking at pedestrian bicycle circulation. And now I realize in reading that the purpose of the particular zoning district specifically includes encouragement of pedestrian and bicycle circulation. So definitely interesting to learn, but thank you for bringing it to my attention. And the best, what we're looking to do is we're looking to use the existing building for storage with intermittent once or twice a week delivery and pickups of extra floor that the company has. Not really conducive to anything that will encourage pedestrian or bicycle circulation. It's not something that we would encourage on the property. So the best we can do is be good neighbors and maintain the building, improve the building, improve the landscaping, maintain the landscaping, maintain the building, make it a more welcoming parcel, so that bikers and pedestrians will feel more comfortable utilizing the rights of way on both sides because it's a corner property. And we think that just from a general perspective, by reactivating the building and maintaining it properly and keeping it looking nice, well maintained, clean, we think that will be conducive to people being more comfortable riding bikes along the right of way on both sides of it, or acting as pedestrians on both sides of it. So that's really the best we can bring to it. We also think, in light of the bike path that's going on the east side of the property, as well as somewhat proximate to the waterfront, by cleaning up the property, we think it also makes it more conducive to some wayfinding signage. If the city wanted to put something along either side saying, this way to the river, this way to the bike trail, we think it's now more conducive because the property's maintained and it's gonna be a more friendlier and welcoming environment. So I think that's really the best we can offer. We can't offer a bike trail through it or sidewalk through it, but we can do our best to maintain a nice property that people will feel comfortable walking on the sidewalks or riding on the bike. So kind of the best we can come up. That being said, it's still the same proposal from last month. We think what we're proposing is definitely serves the best interest of the city. It's taking a vacant building that is somewhat dilapidated and doesn't get the attention it deserves. It's replacing it with an active use from an existing Albany business that owns multiple properties in the South End neighborhood and always been a good neighbor, a good property owner, a good landlord. Wants to reactivate the building, clean it up, make it look nice, and our use is far, far less intense than what the original use variance was for. Use variance was for the light industrial manufacturing and fabrication, and Zach Meehan, who owned IEM, said that at one point they had up to 30 people. We're not proposing any people in the building, other than some panel trucks dropping stuff off and picking stuff off a few times a week. So we think we're much less intense. We think it makes sense to authorize the reduction to the less intense use, and we hope you consider it, and we answer any further questions you have.
Any questions from the board? Just for the record, there's a proposal rate as per the landscaping plan that you submitted, to include a mural and a bench, thing. That is correct.
Yeah, a bench at the far northeast corner. Yeah, I can actually see it.
Yeah.
And the other rectangles are going to be plantings. I'll probably stick with the birch that you guys have already planted. Okay, we're going to maintain the lawns.
Yeah. And so the bench is kind of close to where the property meets with the city's.
It's closest to the bike path.
To the bike path.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And as you see, we're on the west side where it says lawn now, the next section, that originally was supposed to be parking.
Yeah.
But I don't need it. So, I mean, we have parking at the 501 South.
And so what is left as parking space will be sufficient for you? That's great.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it'll be fine.
We wouldn't want to see, trucks, but it's not big trucks, but double parked, parking,
No,
Okay.
No.
Okay.
that's a tough corner. We gotta get off the street.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I did want to follow up as well, because I think at the last meeting towards the end, there was, a potential future residential use that was, just
Not
mentioned.
residential.
Okay,
The church across the street has an interest in some office space. And the two-story front of the building, I actually have no use for. You see the higher roof in the left hand, top left hand.
Yeah.
That's 2 stories, and it's basically not, there's nothing I can do with it.
Okay.
I don't need office space. I don't foresee us needing office space. So, in talking with, it's Pastor Johnson, I believe, he definitely, needs some office space.
and that's obviously a permitted use in that area, so you don't need us to do that, but I know it was brought up, so I just wanted.
The other plus to that is he can use his parking lot. It's only across the street. So it's like a win-win.
How are you gonna go with the neighborhood association?
It went really well. There was no objections whatsoever. There was actually people on the call that objected to our initial change for zoning that didn't speak up. It was very well. And since that meeting, I also connected Joanne Morton with the pre-apprenticeship program for carpenters, which you don't need any skill set. If you don't have a GED, they'll help you get a GED. It's a federally funded program. And she was very excited about it. Because those are, union carpenters are very good paying jobs. I know I signed the checks.
As long as the light. Just make sure as the applicant, when you're speaking, just to speak into the mic and that the green light is on, just so that we have this on record. Thank you.
Sorry.
We're monitoring live stream, so. Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions from the board at this time? I know we have a lot of people in the room. I believe a lot of people are here to discuss our second project for today, regarding the Moore Street project. Just a reminder, this is our first project for tonight. This is regarding 64th Avenue, but if there is anyone in the room who's here tonight or online who would like to speak, for public comments, regarding the 64th project. I think applicants, thank you for now.
Thank you.
And yeah, if there's anyone from the public, we'd love to hear the project on 64.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to put in, David, through material that we asked for.
Oh, no problem. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone on that? Okay, everyone here for Moore Street? Okay. So we will move on. Any motions from the board?
I make a motion to approve the applicant's application, with the following conditions that we've already discussed here, that a mural will be provided, subject to the approval of the planning board, that a minor development plan review will be required, and that the approved use will be limited to the storage and the discussion that we've heard here and at our last meeting and contained within the application.
Page 45. Yes. Serena?
Aye.
Martha?
Yeah.
Lisa?
Yes.
Adriana, yes. That's all five in favor on the motion. The variance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so, with that, that closes the public hearing part of our meeting tonight and opens the public meeting part of our meeting. And we will now be hearing project number 00573. It's application SUP number 2, property address is 568 Moore Street, applicant is College State Road, which is in Egypt, called Albany. It's in the residential 2-family zoning district. The request is to substitute the term pre-existing non-conforming dormitory use for a rooming house use of single residence for single males. This is the first time we're hearing this, application. And, thank you.
Good evening. Paul Goldman. Represent Charles St. Rose, 568 March Street. Charles Dumas, who represents purchaser buyer. Okay, so I've submitted an application.
Pardon me, just please speak into the mic. Thank you.
Usually I'm told to shut up. So, be a little louder.
Thank you.
I also have the affidavit of posting and mailing. You want that or you? Okay, I'll just leave it for the chair. All right, so the issue for today is our request for a substitution. Okay, I don't know how many times this board has been through that. But let's so the picture that's there is the building. It's a big former convent. Okay, so it was owned by the diocese. The school bought it and it became a dormitory for up to 42 people. Has parking for 35 spaces. Okay, so those are the facts. It's a non-conforming use. It was used as a dormitory authority. And, you know, this parcel is part of, unfortunately, the properties that we're selling, because, you know, the decline in the enrollment. Okay, so that's what it is. I used to live on Moore Street when I was in law school back in the Stone Age. And I went to see the property, so I saw it, and it's a bit of an anomaly in the neighborhood. Okay, so it's a big structure, it's a former, you know, convent. And there's most of the neighborhood is R2 zone. Okay, so if you go to the and you can see it kind of fronts, it has frontage on both Myrtle and Moore, right on that where the R2 zone and the brick circle. Find that piece. So we'll go to the next page, please. Yeah. So 375-506 allows for a substitution of a non-conforming use for another non-conforming use. And it involves a statutory or what I call a legal analysis. And the first issue is the ZBA determines based on the table, which is the next slide, that it's the same or less land use intense category. So both, can you go to the next slide, please? So under the, where we see land use category, there's residential uses, and we're in group living. So under that table, first test that has to be analyzed is group living for a dormitory authority. And on the next page, I gave you the planning staff's determination that it's a rooming house. So it's a comparison of the line for rooming house or the line for a dormitory. Okay. And so since the first, if we go back to the prior the sentence, the first sentence means the zoning board has to make a determination that the alternative use is in the same or less intense land use category. Same or less land use category. And I believe that that's met based on a review of the table on the next page, because we're both within the residential uses, group living other. Okay, that's the first prong of the test, and it's satisfied from the fact that we're in the same or less intense land use category under your table, because it specifically references 375-302.1. Okay, so the next test in the next sentence is a little more convoluted. An alternative use may only be found to be same or less intense land use category if listed in the, if it is a listed use in the permitted use table and is allowed in all zones with the same or fewer conditions. So if we go to the next page, on the last line where it says rooming houses is a permitted use with a special use permit. They are conditional use. Okay, and it's allowed in all the zones. My eyesight is going bad, but it is allowed in the same zones as the dormitory authority, which also has, or a dormitory, which also has the CUs. Okay, so it's deemed to be presumptively a less intense use because it's allowed in all the zones, and and a dormitory is a permitted conditional use. Okay, so we could go from a rooming house up to a dormitory authority. But since if you look at the dormitory authority line, there's the C is used for two different zones that are different than the rooming house. So you can't go from a dormitory to a rooming house. So presumptively from the analysis in the statute, it's we satisfy the right under for substitution because we're permitted with a conditional use and selected. We have to get that, and it's allowed in the same or same use. So it's presumptively based on the analysis on the table to be same or less intense. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what the proposal is. Okay, I think that's we now subsequent to the filing of the application, the college has announced it. So let's deal with it. Let's put it all out on the table amongst people here. This is a problem. It's an issue for us. We're gonna have to deal with it. So what is a rooming house that's proposed? He's proposing 42 single resident units. It fits perfectly for the building. Okay, and it's for single males. They are on a month-to-month basis. Okay, now let's talk about some of the facts. This applicant has had two other what frame staff is categorized as rooming houses. One at the old Police Hotel on Quail Street, and another one on 147 Sherman Street. Quail Street has 11 units. I think that was a former convent. And 147 Sherman had 25 units. So the turnover let me give you the turnover statistics, because that's important. It's not like, people come every week, it's a transient housing. It's housing for these individuals. Sherman Street had for January 2023, had a 40% turnover. Quail Street had 26%. Some of the tenants have been in occupancy for 3 to 7 years. So this is kind of stable housing, which is what would be a good use for this. The typical apartment project, market rate apartments, turnover 50% or more a year. That's the normal turnover in an apartment. In terms of the parking, okay, this building has 35 parking spaces. Okay, so most of the occupants of the project don't have cars. They commute by bus service or whatever. Sherman Street has 3 occupants with vehicles. Okay, Quail Street has no occupants with vehicles. There will be no demand for the on-street parking that seems to be in that community. So that's kind of an important fact. The exterior of the building will not be changed. It's an attractive building to go back and look at. So some of the amenities that are used, there's going to be an area of the building which is available for police. Will have a key to use it as like a substation for the neighborhood to see that everything is fine in the neighborhood. It's available in the other locations, and my understanding is that is amenity. There also will be a resident manager, person living there full time. So it's not, like what people connote as would be a rooming house. It's people. This is their first point of entry to the housing to get back on their feet and live. And that's why, it's needed in this community. And we need to make sure that this building, being somewhat of the outlier from the college campus, has some people coming into the neighborhood. And I think it achieves that. Without the substitution, the property will become vacant. It's just, it's an outlier. It's one of the 6 buildings that we've contracted to sell so far. We've sold all of them except this one. Okay, so it still needs a special use permit. Charles, you have anything?
Yeah, hi, Charles Dumas. I'm an attorney. I represent John Mancini, who is the contract ND of the property. I've represented John for a number of years, probably about 12 years. When we first started working together, I helped him obtain from this board 10 years ago a use variance for his property on Sherman Street, 145 Sherman Street. And he's fulfilled all of the conditions that were imposed by that approval. He's operated very successfully over the years. There's no code issues with respect to that property that go unaddressed. And I know that Rick LaJoy, the building department, the director of buildings, would be able to attest to it. There's no material police intervention in that property of any consequence. And notably, there is a police substation in that property that's used from time to time by beat patrolmen, with a bicycle or on foot. And there's an elaborate security system. I think it's important to note that because of the longevity that Mr. Goldman talked about of the tenancies, I think it speaks a lot to the operation of the facility and the reasonableness of the rentals. I think right now, Mr. Mancini is charging in the neighborhood of $700 a month for a safe, clean, livable beginning for a lot of people who are trying to get back on their feet. He serves a wide variety of users by referral from the Homeless and Traveler Aid Society, as well as St. Catherine's Center, and certainly provide attestations of various sorts from them as to the kind of operation that Mr. Mancini runs. In October, Mr. Mancini, as well as representatives of St. Rose, socialized all of this association. And while I was unable to attend that, one attorney from my firm did, and spoke very highly of the positive vibes that the association had. And, you know, I believe that we could probably procure some letter from John Clarkson, a member of the association, or president of the association. I think Mr. LaJoy was there. I think Councilman Belasi was there as well. And I know that Mr. Mancini has had several follow-up conversations with the councilman about questions that he had about the use and comments that he had about the proposal. And I believe all of those have been very positive. The one thing I can also add, which I think is important, is presently the property is not in the tax roll. And under Mr. Mancini's ownership and use of the property, it would be put back. So I think those are important points. And certainly we can offer additional information based upon questions or comments from the audience.
Question from the board?
I have just a couple, I know that again, probably see what's starting. I'm just interested in this final question. What is the property trying to use?
It's a dormitory for it was the last use, and it hasn't been occupied for, I think, this point in the semester, but it's occupied up until, I think,
So December
so
2022?
legally, it would be a dormitory authority, a dormitory, keep saying.
No, I understand. I'm asking when's the last time the students are actually.
I think the end of 22,
Thank you.
or the end, yeah, the end of 22.
So December 2022.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold off on any additional questions until I can get three votes.
So regarding the $700 a month, you said would be being charged, do you know who was teaching that?
The residents,
Sounds correctly.
yeah.
Yes.
If it's all right with the chair, I think this would be the time to move to. Okay.
Can you pull up the table, the reduced table? So, I did not follow your logic, because when I look at the table, I see dormitory and I see 3 Cs that don't exist in the Roman house. It's for the RV, for MUNC, for MUFN. So the way I read the table, dormitory is conditionally allowed for all the same as rooming house, plus just 3 more. MUFN, MUNC, and RV.
Agreed.
But I thought you were saying the opposite, and so
No,
we're going from so like, and it's empty, which is less.
well, it's still considered legally a dormitory. Okay, so by use, that's the analysis. It's the substitution of the dormitory use for the rooming house. So if that's what its use is, it's a dormitory for a dormitory as right now. But I think if you read the second sentence, it is a listed use in the permitted use table and is allowed in all zones. So it's allowed in all the same zones as a dormitory with the same or fewer conditions. So it's allowed in all of the zones where dormitory is a permitted use with conditional permit. So it's the same. So presumptively under the table, and it's a little convoluted, so I apologize. I'm trying to help. And I spent some time kind of looking at it, but it says if it is listed as a listed use in the permitted use table and is allowed in all zones, because that's where we are, with the same or fewer conditions. So the rooming house is allowed in all the same zones that a dormitory is allowed in, with the same conditions being a permitted special use permit. So the issue is that under your analysis, under this table, a rooming house is presumptively less intense than a dorm, which makes sense to, kind of, with youth around there. Whereas if I came to you with a rooming house use, with 40 people, and then I want to substitute a dormitory, that's would fail under that second
So
prong.
I'm just gonna stop you here and just Brad, so if the box is empty, that doesn't mean it's allowed. It's not allowed.
It's not-
Without a use permit.
Correct.
Whereas if there's a C, it's allowed with condition.
Correct.
So the way I understand it, roaming house in those free areas is not allowed.
Correct.
Whereas it is allowed with condition for a dormitory. So I read this the opposite that you're saying, that roaming house is, that a dormitory is allowed in more areas than.
No,
roaming
that's,
house.
that's, okay.
Correct.
What it's talking about is the alternative use that we're proposing is allowed in all zones with the same or fewer conditions. And it is, it's exactly the opposite.
I think it's the opposite,
Are
from the
we-
table, from the way the people read.
I don't believe so. I mean, it's a legal issue, but it says an alternative use may only be found to be permitted in the same or less land.
We have council, and I mean, Brad, you were involved in rewriting the USDO, and you're familiar with how the table works. Can you just walk us through how to read the table from that perspective? Like, not give us a legal analysis or whatever, but just your professional opinion or understanding of how to read the table, please.
I mean, there's a few different ways you could read the table. You could read the table that they're in the same category and that they're all under group living category, but looking at the two uses compared to one another, the dormitory is allowed in more districts, conditional or permitted,
Yeah.
than the rooming house, and therefore it would be presumptive that the rooming house would be a more intensive use allowance. Allowed to. That's my reading. I think
I
you're,
will point out then
I mean,
that
I
the
think-
group living and other, which I believe your client was initially, or your client was initially for, that does seem to be allowed in more areas than even the dormitory or the, but I guess that's kind of a separate
Well-
question, which we won't get too much into.
Yeah,
today, but-
our initial application was for a conditional site approval. Because our interpretation and reading of the code was that the proposed use was living up. We received an interpretation from Brad, indicating that he felt as though the proposed use was rooming house. I suppose we could have appealed that decision, and we certainly have reserved the rights to that. But we felt as though this was a cleaner, easier way where we could proceed to get to the same point and agreeing to simply disagree.
See, I think that second sentence, I don't agree with Mr. Glass. We had a conversation, Conference, but it says an alternative use may only be found. So that alternative use is referring to, in this case, the rooming house use, okay? And then, so if it's listed in the permitted use table, it's a listed use, which it is, okay? So then it says and is allowed. So the and is allowed in all zones with the same. That is referring to the alternative use being the rooming house use. And then in all zones with the same or fewer conditions, then the prior legal non-conforming use. That's the dormitory. That's the prior legal non-conforming use. That's how that has to be read.
I don't disagree with that. I think I disagree with your interpretation of this table. Like that, those free zoning areas, the RV, MUNC, and MUNF allow for conditional use of dormitory, whereas they do not allow at all without a variance. The rooming house.
It's a special use permit. Which is a permitted use. But it's allowed in all zones with the same or fewer conditions. The way it's being read,
I think there's a legal implication at that point to be made whether the fact that there's no conditional use allowed in the table for those three areas equates a necessarily equates not lesser use, I don't know how to say that. You know, like, I guess I'm saying I don't know that the, that table alone negates necessarily the argument that it's a lesser use, but I just wanted to clarify that I don't think the reading of the table creates a presumption that it is a lesser use.
And I don't want to be arguing, that. That's not, that's not going to help. I don't agree with that, and I spent a lot of time looking at it. But, reasonable minds can disagree. But the issue, I think, is that it's a proposed use that's being offered will provide some stability to the neighborhood that's greater than a vacant building. That, I think, I've said that as to, the turnover, and I've established that, so.
So let me get into the next couple of questions I have. I think I wanted to make the point, we got Brad's opinion on it. I think, it was important to make that clarification. I wanted to make sure board members, understood that. Because I think it is important to our decision to consider that as well. Like I just said, I think the table is not necessarily determinative, but I think it does cite some information. I have a couple questions, but I think my first one is pretty clearly,
You should do much.
that, can you talk a little bit about, so why an SRO, like, is your client getting, funding, grant funding of any kind that, I guess, creates an obligation for an SRO, supports that? Is there a reason other than, he's been operating some, it's working for him from a market perspective, the building, the way to already set up lends itself to that? Like, I was just, is there something else going on here as well? Is there grant funding supporting this?
No, there is no grant funding. Mr. Mancini, acquires a property, makes it usable for this purpose, as a free enterprise. And there's no funding stream available to it certainly fills a need in the community, as evidenced by the facilities that he has, operates, and are completely filled.
I was gonna ask you, is there a vacancy there?
No, there was no vacancy whatsoever, and his sense of it that he's communicated to me is that he could probably have this property built within 30 to 60 days.
For the next meeting, if you could have just, maybe data over the last year on, vacancy at the two other SROs, keywords, just for certain.
Sure.
I think that's interesting. And so, okay, so no grant funding and et cetera. So, and I heard the $700. So this is a business market operation. So if he gets to decide and set the regs, there's no, since there's no grant funding, there's no obligations limiting the requirements of what he's setting up here. So that was useful to understand that. I do have other questions, but first, so why from what I've read so far, I've seen single men. Is there a reason men only?
Yeah, I think it's because when you combine populations in the same facility, it's problematic. And this is the model that he's operated very successfully.
Going back to I know there was a mention of products, and St. Catherine providing some referrals. Those are referrals, but then it's market rate. Like you enter into month-to-month lease directly, there's no they're not coming in from not-for-profits, placing them. People have agreements with not-for-profits, et cetera. And so I assume some people are arriving here through those organizations, but some people may just see a listing or sign, call in. So it's basically like I can go and rent an apartment.
Yes.
Like a road.
And after completing an application and being screened.
Thank you. Okay, then I Googled SROs, all that, tonight. Wasn't fully familiar, and then from the floor plans and all that, I still am not 100% clear on what the units look like. Did I understand correctly that a little bit the way it's currently set up in the dormitory, there's no actual kitchen, is there a bathroom in each, no bathroom, that's on each floor, there's kind of a, kitchen, bathroom situation for,
Yes, so very much like a dormitory, there are single rooms. Some of the rooms were doubly used by the college, and the proposal that Mr. Mancini has is to make single rooms out of the double rooms. There would be communal bathrooms and communal kitchen.
okay. And so, yeah, from the floor plan, I couldn't fully figure it out, I don't know if you're able to. So like the
Well,
bigger rooms we're seeing in the back are those, what are
Yeah.
the communal bathrooms and kitchen?
Yeah, you can see the right by the stairs.
Yeah.
I believe on all 3 floors. That would be bathroom area. And my understanding is that you wanted to do a communal kitchen in the basement.
Okay, so one communal kitchen for the full building,
Yes,
and then bathrooms. And so the 14, like those are the double rooms that are being split up?
yes,
Okay, okay. I wasn't sure if those were like kitchen bed on each floor and bathroom. I was confused by those because, okay, I did read, and what's this by the stairs? Oh, those are bathrooms, sorry. Okay. Yeah, right there. Okay, those are the communal bathrooms, each floor, and then, a joint kitchen and the basement. Okay.
Yes, quick question more on the interiors. Is this arrangement with communal bathrooms and kitchens what is currently being used for the Whale and Sherman properties?
yes, very similar. And the idea here is that this would occupy, be used and occupied very, very similarly to the Sherman Street property. That would sort of be a template for operations.
I think if you want to provide pictures and what they look like, that sounds like something the chair's asking for.
I mean, it doesn't hurt, but I think this answers my questions. I just wanted some clarity. I think just, the discussion is enough for me, but if you want to say that, you're good, fine. Can you just elaborate a tiny bit more on, the police substation mentioned?
Yes. That was important to this board 10 years ago. We received the variance for Sherman Street. And I don't know that it's used daily, but I do know that it's used by police officers to come out of the rain, out of the cold, have a cup of coffee, take a break, have lunch, that type of thing.
So it's a locked room on the first floor.
Yes,
That, only police, like, officers have.
that is correct, yes.
I think for now, the other question I had, sorry, a couple more. So I believe, that the current use variance allows for, allows for 35 rooms,
Correct. The use variance that was granted to College of St. Rose was up to 35.
which matches
Students.
the amount of parking spaces, right, is what I've heard.
I don't know if that is by design, because it's certainly more more rooms and interiorly, we have COs for those uses.
If I remember correctly, the prior use variance that was granted indicated approximately 35.
Pull it up.
Yeah, it says approximately 35 students. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I think over time, you see initially, the initial floor plan, for the property, I think showed 35 rooms. But, you know, over time, usage, double rooms become single rooms or, I don't know that you can necessarily go by rooms, but by number of students. The information we received from the college, was that at some points there were up to 42 students occupying the property, either in single rooms or double.
And your client's proposal is for how many rooms?
42.
Right.
42 occupants.
Well, just the 42 rooms. You know, I think I would like to maybe see if your client would consider staying at the 35 or going back to the 35. I think if that was to be granted, I think maybe that's something I would be interested in you taking back to your client and see what he needs to say about staying at 35. But
I did socialize that with him, anticipating that that may be a question. And, you know, it's a question of economics because he has to pay extra the building, extra taxes, insurance, operations and so forth. So whether or not that would be economically feasible for him, I'd have to have him crunch the numbers. But the request is for 42. Which he believed was necessary in order for him to pay what he is contractually obligated to pay for the property.
I think for the next meeting, based on the recommendation and I just organized and take a lot of public comments tonight, I would ask that if at the next meeting you can address that. Take that back to you.
I'll really try to address it.
Thank you. Oh, and there was a statement that was made about compliance with the variance that exists for Sherman Street. That mentions that, and I assume that's correct, but I need to double check that. Yeah. And I assume that if there's been no code enforcement issues, that then it needs various compliance with the variance. But I just want, I would like that double check by parents. So Amanda, if you could check that to the next.
Yeah, I think that's that too, to see the variances for Sherman Street and Quail Street properties. And what factors the board.
I don't think there was any variance for the Quail Street property. I think historically that was used as a hotel. And it is being used and occupied in a similar basis. It has been for 20, 30 years. Yeah, it's noteworthy. The Sherman Street property was a former convent that became a school. This board granted a variance for its use as a SRO right next to an elementary school.
I do just want to clarify, you know, that use variance was granted for the prior zoning code. The zoning code was updated in 2017 and the use variance has not been brought forth since before that.
Yeah,
So I just want to put that.
Yeah, that's correct. That was with the old code prior to the USDL. Yeah.
I might have no more questions and I know there's people who
I have to speak to a question. So Paul, you had spoken about that you have a legal analysis to support your application and, you know, we talked about the charge. We pulled them there at the table rather, and then as our chair said, we have the chief planning officials here with, you know, this task with interpreting the zoning code, and he has given us how to interpret the table. And so I don't think this is a matter of splitting hairs, and I don't think the table supports what you are currently requesting. So can you please provide us with the case law and with the legal analysis that you have, not right now, but for the next meeting?
I don't think there's gonna be any legal analysis on the city's, USDO code. I don't think there's been any substitution.
You have brought up that you've done this legal analysis that supports your application, so you can provide the board with the.
I mean, I'll give you the, I tried to do it on the application, I'll certainly provide it. So that's, yeah, I'm not trying to, I mean, that was my reading of the statute. It's really what the plain language of the statute means. That's my reading, but I'll certainly provide that. I have no problem.
Thank you.
Just to piggyback on that, something that came to my attention when the application was submitted that I wasn't aware of prior was the existence of the use variance for the dormitory back from 1978. That to me would call into question whether this is in fact non-conforming use. Typically, I wouldn't consider a property that has a variance to be a non-conforming use. I did raise this with Mr. Dumont prior to this meeting. That said, the prior case that we had before us tonight was regarding the amendment of use variance to a less intensive use. So I think, we may want to correct that in terms of what the board is actually considering. This is in fact a substitution non-conforming use. So I think just piggybacking on what Martha said, we may want to comment on whether they should be provided in the submission to be an amendment of a pre-existing use variance as opposed to a substitution non-conforming. So I think the analysis is going to be similar, but
We could do, an amendment request. It eventually, because the college is closing, it's eventually going to become a non-conforming use. So, it's just a question of when, the timing of it. I certainly, I think under your USDO code, it talks about that which is not defined within the code. So it's a non-conforming use under that definition. I think that's, I'll try to push that out. So
yeah, I guess my position would be the dormitory is a permitted use because it has variance. Non-conforming use would be something that's not in compliance with the zoning. The dormitory is in compliance. Like I said, I still think there's an avenue for you to pursue. I'm just saying, being that was brought to light, that just changed. I would have suggested that the application be made, and I want to make sure legally that we're actually.
Yeah, you can always, apply for relief in the alternative, right? So the question I suppose ultimately is going to be whether this board has any appetite for what it is we're talking about, or whether we should just take a hike.
Well, with respect to 64th Avenue, our understanding is that to amend the use variance for less intensive use does not require the full application of the modern use variance standards. It's treated more like a substitution of non-conforming, and it's how we evaluate the 64th Avenue case. So I'm not suggesting that you have to go through the full rigorous analysis for a use variance in order to apply under that. That's not where I'm going with that.
Right. No, and I appreciate that, Brad. That my sense overall is that, if there's an appetite for what it is we're trying to do here, then we can amend the application or we can apply the alternative. But if there's clearly no appetite on this board's behalf, then we shouldn't be wasting your time or ours.
Understood. I think, unless there's any other questions from the board at this point, let's move on to the comment.
Sure.
I think maybe it is for 30 days to follow this battle, that subject, after the meeting as to whether or not the application should get amended, et cetera, but, let's, thank you. Go to this, and then, and no questions. No, for public comments, we usually give about 3 minutes to everyone who's comment. We ask that you speak to the board, not to the applicant. We're trying to avoid, back and forth. We're here to, this is your opportunity to talk to us and give us your vision, your opinion on all of this. If you have questions, to let us know what your questions and concerns are. We want to keep this cordial and organized, and so it's, your opportunity to talk to us and not to the applicant. And then after we get your public comment, we can then, the applicant can have a rebuttal, and then the board can take it from there. With that said, let's start with this. Who signed up to speak?
So first we have Bridget Pryor. When you come up, please state your name and address for the record, please. And again, you have 3 minutes to speak. I'll have a timer. You'll hear it go off once the 3 minutes is over.
Thank you. Name's Bridget Pryor. I'm at 725 Myrtle Avenue. So the picture, it's literally on the Myrtle Ave side. We share things. We're right there, where the house is. So, with that said, I'm here to obviously express my strong opposition to the proposed zoning changes for 568 First Street, specifically the establishment of a single occupancy residence for males, particularly given its proximity to my property on River Avenue. I have resided in the neighborhood for the past 25 years, and during this time, I have witnessed the positive dynamics that have arisen from the mixed families, students, and single dwelling homes. My property, which shares a fence, as I mentioned, with 568 Moore Street, holds sentimental value to me, and I am deeply invested in maintaining the harmony and stability that has characterized Pine Hills for so long. I am particularly concerned about the potential implications of converting the building into a SRO. For males, my worries extend beyond the immediate impact on my property, as I am apprehensive about the potential occupants and the broader consequences for our community's well-being. In the past 3 years, Pine Hills has experienced an increase in family population, contributing to the thriving sense of community we cherish. Introducing a single occupancy residence may disrupt the delicate balance that has made our neighborhood a welcoming and harmonious place to live. I request that my concerns, as well as those of my fellow neighbors, be thoroughly considered during the decision-making process. Preserving the character of our neighborhood and the safety of our residents is paramount. And I believe careful deliberation on the potential impact of the proposed zoning change is crucial. I appreciate your consideration and look forward to a thoughtful discussion on how best to preserve the unique qualities that make Pine Hills a wonderful place to live. Thank you.
I think there's other people that may want to speak that aren't signed up, that's quite fine. We're going to go with the people who are signed up, and then, anyone who wants to add anything else, is more than welcome to add anything.
So up next, we have Deanne Webster. Okay, so next we have Will Sekula.
My name is Will. I reside at 542 Moore Street. Good evening. I want to begin my comments by acknowledging the need for affordable housing opportunities in Pine Hills in the city of Albany. To me, this includes all types of quality housing options, single family, multi-family rentals, home ownership, in my opinion, even non-traditional housing options, such as student housing, move-in housing, SROs, and other types of single housing. The data shows almost nothing worse for a neighborhood than vacant and abandoned properties. Hence, this property's reuse is of utmost importance to the neighborhood. Pine Hills is a diverse, inclusive, welcoming neighborhood that provides opportunities for everyone. However, our neighbors are also not strangers to out-of-town investors, landlords who do not work in good faith to provide quality housing opportunities or work with the community to keep it the great neighborhood that it is. They're only looking to extract money from vulnerable populations at the expense of the community. Just to be clear, I have no reason to believe that the buyer of 568 Moore Street is one of these landlords, but only that I'm looking for a specific lens of the statement for concerns about this project and how they apply to the trust to the PPA. My first concern is there appears to be no plan for really any property rehabilitation, even though it has been at least underutilized by state roads for a few years now. It's unclear to what capacity the building has been used for housing over the last 7 years. But since I've lived in my property since 2019, it seems as though it hasn't been fully occupied for most of that time. Based on the age of the building, it seems there's likely there could be another asbestos. I am unsure if the college has addressed this during the ownership of the property either. So In the current proposal, looks like there's only one bathroom and one kitchen per floor, to share among, approximately 12 to 15 rooms. Which as a former college student, I can tell you barely works for 18 to 22-year-olds. My guess is that it probably doesn't work very well, for men who are likely in more precarious situations. With 40 to 50 new roads for housing, it has not been clear who will be working on site to respond to all kind of issues concerns by neighbors. St. Rose is the owner of the building. The college is responsible for protecting residents of those buildings as they were students of the college. We're also located in the community. It's strictly an investor landlord property. The new owner is now responsible for protecting the tenants. Similarly, there are concerns that the owner does not have a physical presence in the neighborhood, either in the form, again, concerns about on-site management or employees and making sure maintenance and tenants concerns that. As I mentioned, I am one of many neighborhood residents who would invite this to use in terms of housing. However, there's so many questions that I have. Fires, plans for the building, how he plans to operate a rooming house, basically doubling his current inventory with the other properties he owns. I certainly welcome answers to some of these questions and hope everyone can get on the same page. We're all in agreement that we want this property to remain a community asset.
Next up, we have Craig Doris.
My name is Craig Doris. I have 532 First Street. My name is Craig Doris. I have 535 years. I've lived in it for about 3 or 4 years. It is the only rental property that I own, so at the first 5 basis, I like to take great care of my part my question is just, I'm sitting here, I need to understand how 42 units is less intensive than 35. First of all. Secondly, I'd like to bring up that college dormitory is not year round typically. Living on that space, I can tell you that it's not been very occupied in recent years, but definitely not during summer times. I would think that a year round facility of occupants would be more intensive. Less so. But I think that with us all finding out about St. Rose just recently, this became public to us, it makes us all a bit nervous, right? About where the direction of this area is. These are our homes, whether they be our homes or investments, they're very important to us. And I think that as we hold our breath to find out what happens with St. Rose, this is kind of the first shoe to drop. So we have to be very careful about what happens here. And I feel like listening to the proposal, it makes me even more nervous. I think that this neighborhood is probably right now a little nervous because we're on a fence right now. We've got a very large constituent leaving. St. Rose was kind of the glue that was helping hold that neighborhood together. And without St. Rose, I don't really know where that's going to come from. And unless we take the necessary steps to push this neighborhood in the right direction, then we could all, have some issues on our hands with everything from property value to incidents to everything else. So that's all.
Okay, yeah, please.
So much to take in. I did here, wow. From dormitory to. Oh, I'm sorry. Jenny Stephanie Woodard. I live at 544 Morris Street. I've been living in the neighborhood for 50 years. So I grew up in the Pine Hills neighborhood, and I also live right next door pretty much to what we still call, the convent. So my main concern is really, how we got here and why an SRO in such a neighborhood as Pine Hill, which has always been a neighborhood. I know that there are eligibility requirements, which I did not hear from the developer on who and how they're gonna be selected to come. I know we talked about some of the, volunteer agencies that could do referrals and also people could just be walk. This dorm has been vacant probably since the late 1970s, early 80s, when the nuns left. When St. Vincent's closed, we called the VI, when the elementary school closed, it's been vacant until Father St. Rose decided to create a dorm. And then they said, oh, we're gonna be great neighbors, which they were. It's my understanding it was a freshman dorm. So, you know, freshmen don't have cars. So they left that parking lot vacant for pretty much majority of the time it's been there. It's never been on a tax roll, we know that, because it was owned by the Catholic Diocese, then by the Father St. Rose. So it's not like we're hurting in that area. Also, we have already an issue on Madison Avenue, right, Price Chopper. We could barely go into Price Chopper without panhandlers because there is a rooming house right on the corner, right across the street from the police station. And I'm not quite sure if I understood the presentation regarding a police substation at the College St. Rose, because why would there be one at that dorm when there's a police station on Madison Avenue? Who's coming in from the Cove and they just go to the police station if they wanted to come in from the Cove? I heard, is there an appetite for this? And as a resident and living in there, growing up at 546 Morris Street and purchasing a home at 544 Morris Street and getting to know other College St. Rose residents who have purchased homes within the district, right on the block. With my son going to the music program and getting a scholarship because the College St. Rose offers scholarships to kids who attended Pine Hill Elementary School. Is there an appetite for an SRO? No, there isn't, because we're not gonna have, similar to what Craig just indicated, it's not gonna be family. It's not going to be a place where children and families are gonna wanna walk with 50 or 42 or 35 men living. And it's right across the street from the park. Ridgefield Park borders pretty much right at the end of the parking lot at the College of St. Rose, that dormitory. Not to mention the Pine Hills Elementary School and the two bus stops we have at the bottom at Partridge and Morris and out South Main in Morris. Not a good fit at all. Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone else?
Nope. Yep, and I can bring up the letter.
Received, written, comments in front of the letter from, Mr. Chester. I've asked, our planning staff, committee that you should read it. Even though it's already in the record, just for everyone.
Yep, I'm just gonna pull one up for me, so it's, yeah. Yeah, I was gonna try to read it. Okay, BZA Chair Adriana LeBlanc. I'm unable to attend the BZA meeting the evening of December 6th due to a prior commitment. Please accept this letter as testimony in opposition to granting any kind of variance for 568 Morris Street. I'm a homeowner at 632 Morris Street, a few hundred yards up the block. There are a number of questions that have been raised about this proposal, and none of the feedback or behavior by the seller and or prospective buyer have eased my concerns. It is my understanding that the buyer intends to convert Morris Hall into a SRO/rooming house for 42 male residents. Some of my concerns include the property currently has a variance for a college dormitory. There is a vast difference between a dorm, which has on-site supervision 24/7 of teens/young adults, and a residence for older men with no supervision and the only security being a locked door. The LLC that would be operating this property is not in the neighborhood, unlike when it was a dorm, and there does not appear to be any provision for closely monitoring the property and its residents. The LLC has several other small SRO houses. This is a massive scaling up with no additional measures to deal with the increased intensity of the land use. The affidavit talks about splitting some of the rooms/doubles into singles to create additional rooms. This would increase the intensity of the land use for this location, not decrease it or have it remain the same. The statement at the Pine Hills Neighborhood Association meeting did not voice any opposition to the plan. This was the first that anyone had heard of the idea, and while there wasn't an immediate negative reaction, that is due to our desire to find out more about the plan and its repercussions. Our lack of opposition was misrepresented. That there will be a small kitchen and a single bathroom for the 14 rooms/occupants on each floor, which is grossly inadequate and intensifies the use of the property. This proposal dredges up memories, nightmares of dealing with Roger Plouffe's properties. In those instances, we had numerous small apartments that also included kitchenettes and bathrooms. His business model was to fill the apartments with low-income residents whose rent would be paid by social services. The city and the neighborhood's costs were numerous police calls to those addresses. The one on North Allen had over 400 calls a year, and the activities that required police attention happened both at the address and in the wider neighborhood. I fear that this proposal creates a potential for lowest possible investment for highest income that would make Mr. Plouffe's apartments look high-end. I'm a long-time, 4 decades resident of this block, and I vehemently oppose granting a use variance for this project. We have had a week to absorb the news that the College of St. Rose is closing. I would like to see other proposals for use of this property before we accept this one. Regards, Richard A. Chesser.
Okay, thank you, for the public comment. I think it's appropriate, it's, the issue with San Rose of this building is they're not gonna change. It's a big building in an R2 zone, so something has to be done with, either it gets rezoned or, it's just gonna be, no one's gonna take. It's an anomaly in an R2 zone, so we have to kind of figure it out. We're left with a struggle. If it's not this use, then it still has to be dealt with in terms of the use. And I think the comments that the public made and written comment are thought. I mean, look, I understand it, I get it. I think the college gets it. It's nothing that anyone wants, but we have to deal with what we have to deal with in terms of where we're left with this particular building. It's an anomaly in an RG. And we have a contract that if we lose this contract, I don't think anyone else will buy the asset until it's rezoned with some level of density, so either multifamily or something. So it is a problem. Unfortunately, we have to deal with the problem. It's just where we're going. In terms of the operator's a good user, take pictures and show you what his buildings look like. I think that will allay some of the fears. The more people hear about it, the better. So, I think, what got lost, was the discussion, there is an on-site resident manager, lives there in the building. That was not, some of the people didn't hear it, some of the people weren't it, but I know that is the model that he's gonna have. In terms of the density, we'll take back that issue of the 35 versus the 42. But, I think having a vacant building is just not a desirable thing in your community. Some people really disagree. In terms of the intensity use, I'll come back with our legal analysis. I think it's, it's just a comparison of the table, but again, you can take the factors in there and look at it. I think the users in, he operates a good operation. I think we should provide some pictures of what it looks like, some testimonials from, Hattis and, St. Catherine's. I think that will maybe allay fears, because, we gotta kind of, this is the first public vetting of the use. We need to kind of understand what it is before we dismiss it as a different notion of which to it, why it is reactionary. But let's try to get you the facts and we can deal with the facts as presented.
Very well said, Mr. President.
Starting with our new make it up on the fly.
A question, I wanted to give the public the opportunity to speak, recognizing that it's late on in school time.
Sure.
And I heard from both Mr. Goldman and Mr. Dumont, and I really appreciate that you brought up the resident manager, because I'd like to talk a little bit about that, especially with respect to the comparison between a resident manager and how a school would manage a property like this. So we take it, we'll indulge, we'll take it a little bit step by step.
Sure.
So College of St. Rose currently has property and security that manages safety of property use in conjunction with AD.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, does Mr. Mancini or your client, does he anticipate having full-time security similar to that which the college currently contracts or employs
Yes.
on site?
Yes, electronic security systems.
Okay, let me
With-
rephrase,
with-
does
with-
he anticipate having physical employees providing security?
A full-time, resident supervisor. Yeah.
Okay. So the resident supervisor would be, is that same thing as resident manager?
I would say, yeah.
And I think what maybe the asking is if he continues what he does, I think that's your question, right?
No, I think my question is the one-to-one comparison of what the school currently provides and comparing that to what Mr. Mancini plans to provide. So I understand that there are other measures. I mean, I have a ring camera. I understand that there are tech versions of security, but I have lived in Albany for a very long time. I go to St. Rose and I've Albany, but I'm very familiar with the St. Rose security vans and security officers that I understand is control. That wouldn't exist here.
I think it's not really, respectfully, it's not a fair comparison because St. Rose has so many more buildings that they have to operate. And the point of it is that let's find out what the facts are as to how it's going to operate with security provides and the security.
Well, I do not disagree, and absolutely not there. Let's go down a little bit more. The resident manager will live on the property,
Yes.
and are there rules that the property, the tenants would have to follow?
Yes.
Are those created or drafted by an overarching board, or is it just your client?
My client, and we could provide you sample of what those rules are in his other properties.
But that's quite unlike the perhaps whatever school code of conduct or the processes of schooling. Right, when there's a dean or somebody who can discipline students.
Well, I would say that a month-to-month tenancy, that if that tenant violates code of conduct rules that are applicable to the property, they're subject to not being renewed.
Absolutely, but those are different disciplinary, or those are different consequences for a student.
Well, yeah, I
That's
imagine,
contractual consequences.
I imagine the student wouldn't be expelled if they violated rules.
That's depends on school.
I guess it does. I guess it depends on the landlord too.
Right.
But I think the thing is that the rules that would be similar to. If it's an apartment use, you have a lease and occupancy agreement. If you violate that, you get evicted or you don't pay your rent. That's so we're transitioning the building from a school dormitory to an apartment in essence, or multi-level if it's approved. But the point of it is,
Apartments would be different.
if it's zoned for that, that would be the only other alternative to this use, but someone's gonna have to subdivide the building.
I know, I understand that, but I want to be clear, like, when we're making these comparisons, that we're not moving it into a part. I expect that people would have other concerns, other questions, right? We are moving from the dormitory to an overarching body that disciplines students, that monitors issues, that has an interest, a very different interest in working with the neighborhood, and monitoring certain quality of life issues, and who can discipline students in a different way than a contractual landlord to take action with respect to the tenant. I don't think there's any disagreement on that.
I don't want to be argumentative, I'm just saying to you that again, the contract MD, operates his buildings, and I think the best testament to it is how he's operating the buildings. Maybe the testimonial to that is what's going to allay fear as to how he operates it, because we can speculate as to, it's going to be different. We both agree that it's not school. But the point is, I think the relevant point is, how is he operating the buildings that he operates in the city of Albany and the one in Troy? And are there any violations? Are there code issues? I don't think there are any. And I think he operates it well.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to meet as a member of this board, to ask his representative and to get that information, like you said, to get the facts.
I'm in agreement with it.
I haven't expressed any fears, I'm simply trying to understand with respect to the comments that we made about similarities between this current use and the use that you're asking for, that they are very different. But I appreciate your assistance in trying to get to that.
And so I'll try to get you the answers to that, because I think you're entitled to it. I think people are entitled.
I definitely am. Can you tell me, I think the information that I am really interested in, and you answered, Mr. Bowman, I think you answered the question about when the last time the property was used. I think in terms of, I want to make a record that is going to be one of my explicit questions about when the last time students, staff, or otherwise were actually occupying the building.
Clarify, make sure and say that multifamily is not a permitted use. Multifamily would actually be a condition of permitted use for this property as with a number of other uses. But I just wanted to correct that. And then the other thing I want to point out is I did speak with the director of our building department this morning regarding Mr. Mancini's track record with his other property. Did receive nothing but favorable comments with respect to that. But I did want to just underscore that the use may outlast Mr. Mancini's ownership, and therefore, there have to be appropriate amendments or conditions that would ensure that a future owner or operator would continue to service the property in the same way that a positive operator that Mr. Mancini seems to be awarded. So just don't compensate.
Anything else from the board? I guess I wanted to draw attention to, of course, anyone who disagree with me, there's some things that I gleaned from the public comment for, since you mentioned the council. Just that earlier, that everyone on the board had an appetite to see this review kind of application and with an open mind, and hopefully we are all clear and surviving on whatever that application looks like. It's important. There's some things that I agree in the public comments about the public is concerned about character of the neighborhood. The community haven't seen the neighborhood control. They are concerned about the accountability criteria and the people that are working with the work after properly transit. What management will look like as a fellow working person talked about. Whether there could be some operational benefits and some property that is already managed. And then we talk about the 42 units versus 35 units. And
the proximity to Bridgefield Park. So to the extent that you can think about communities, it's done in the now, or we have perhaps revise or kind of an application to make sure that we do not out to the board to ensure that what you are presenting to us would align with what the character neighborhood is and how it will look going forward. I'm not looking for a response.
Well, surely, but I'm looking for a clarification on one of the points that you've made. I think it was made in the public, comments about the proximity to the park. How is that a negative?
I didn't characterize the positive or negative, but that appears to be a concern from the residents who live in that neighborhood, so think about it. I'll be better as well, and I have a, for private.
I would think that would only be a benefit to the residents.
I think, but people, I think I really encourage, a mentioning of, getting access station information, at that center. We talked about a bunch of different other information earlier as well, that you're looking at citing, vacancies, things like that, I think I agree with everything that my colleagues and the board just said, and I guess I will second or triple that I have not really heard anything tonight from the applicant as to any plans to update, upgrade, improve the building, other than just taking it over, immediately turning it around and like leaving it pretty much as it is. And, and honestly, the photo of the building, I think at the beginning, the nice building, I don't think it looks that great. It kind of looks old and dilapidated. And, it looks like it could use, a fresh coat of paint and a little bit of TLC. And, I think that's also what we're hearing from the community, really. There's a proposed change here that, and that's great, but if you're just gonna go in and just not update and not do anything to the building itself, other than just divide double rooms into single rooms. It seems, I mean, it's a money, thing, but I think that might be something you might want to consider as well.
Well, I've got a list of, yeah, I got a list of things I want to talk to you. So, I think, when is the next meeting?
Right now, January 10th, it still has to go through city clerk, but just a tentative date is January 10th.
Are you planning on meeting with the neighborhood association?
Yeah.
Yeah, that, I thought about that. Thank you for that. Good idea. Yeah, it's like, there's more of that discussion with you.
I would encourage you to really work with the neighborhood, as you may have seen with our previous applicant. They made a concerted effort to address community concerns. And I think the next one will be on addressing that. So, and their project was for a building that was not occupied by humans. So,
Was that, I think also, we've been hearing, we've heard the concerns of the community, who said you thought you had some public feedback. So, if the council member wants, if you want to provide supportive, if you can get and provide supportive, examples of people in the community that are in favor, or we can hear all of that. I really extension that thought you had some support in the community. Show that to us.
That's what we've been led to believe.
Yeah, if that's the case, yeah.
Entertain a motion.
Yes, please, sorry.
I move that we table this application subject to the applicant providing a long list of information that I will not even attempt to go through right now, but I will know it's available, taking copious notes in order to respond to the concerns of the board, share, until we meet next.
And then when things are recorded, so you need to go through the recording, I'm sure Manly can provide that to figure out the whole. A second. Second. Thank you. Do we have a vote?
Yes.
Martha? Yeah. Rita? Yes. Paige? Yes. Andrea? Yes. That's the list is not an example.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
That's very good.
We had lots of things, voting for Bencher. I will. Oh, yes, minutes as well, thank you, but, yeah, those two things. Let's keep going with the session, hold it over as well for the duration of that, and minutes of page number 2. Thank you. I demanded a little bit, so I will give you a 6 meeting.
Excuse me.
Can the audience? Yeah.
Still recording, still muted. Thank you.
So, you know, that's partly why I also pushed for this stakeholder discussion, and I made that, I will probably next. Putting that out there.
Can the audience please move out? If you're having a conversation, please move outside of the meeting room. The meeting is still commencing. Thank you.
That's it, we're having interest, is there a motion for? So, Serena? Yes.
Yes, please.
Yes, Martha? Yeah. That is, approved, and, they're registered. And so they're here. Okay, with that, meeting minutes from.
10:25, October 25th.
Any, comments, questions, editing, board, motion to approve?
I'm going to approve.
You have second. Seven, eight. So, yes, yes, Martha? Yeah. Serena? Yes. Paige? Yeah. And yes. Approved, a motion to adjourn.
Actually, just like a quick note, this is probably one for Council and Brad. I just want to know, I'm pretty sure, at least me, maybe a couple other people, I was only approved for a term ending this year. So in order for me to be able to attend the January meeting, somebody probably has to do something to keep it going.
Really that was.
You do stay on until someone else is appointed, but that, so thank you for reminding us. We will, we'll get that moving. It's
Right.
probably not gonna get through by January, but you can stay on. Yeah. So it's fine, it's months. Okay, if you look through it, if I have a opinion, I'd like to reappoint, so.
Well, and that's what I think, my reason, I just haven't seen.
We can be in touch with the clerk's office with our events.
I mean, we all have training and.
Yes.
December as well.
That's 31st.
Well, I'm thinking. I'm good my homework. Sorry, we're still on the record. Yeah, thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yes.
Yeah, Marita, Serena, all in favor? Great.
Yeah.
I mean.